Well, hello, Andrew Chamberlain. I have very exciting news for you for today's episode. Are you ready?
I am. I'm always excited, but now I'm ready as well.
This is the 55th episode of this award-winning podcast.
Oh, I love it. I love how you snuck in award-winning there as well.
Hey! You just sprinkle that in, but 55th episode. I mean, come on.
Yeah, well done, us. Well done.
And I thought only appropriate for such an important and monumental episode that we touch on a topic that we haven't covered before. That's near and dear to my heart. I know I spent almost 10 years in this space, and I don't know that you truly appreciate. So I'm looking to elevate your consciousness, your awareness, your appreciation for all that is component relations. Do you know what that is? Should I pause? Should I backtrack?
No, I can't backtrack. Sorry, there was just abject silence there. Sorry, it's gone. Tell me another word for it.
Andrew, component relations is a more representative term for everything that is components, chapters, affiliates, regions,
right,
segments, whatever your association universe is carved up into to best represent your membership. Does this make sense?
This is making sense. This is making sense. No, this now. And now I understand why we're on the pod. Excellent. And now I'm excited. Don't look at me like that. Don't look at me. Don't judge me. Don't judge me. This is your world of genius, and I'm stepping into it. And it's, an uncomfortable place sometimes.
Okay. All right. Well, buckle up, because here we go. I actually, even more exciting than just the topic and the 55th episode, I have two amazing guests with me today. So be on your best behavior, clean it up. Be good, because I brought people into the Association Transformation House, and I want this to go well. I want our guests to return. I have two of my friends from the ASAE Component Relations Council, and they are also going to be speaking with me at this year's ASAE annual convention in Nashville. So drum roll. Can you do the drum roll?
A drum roll, yeah. I'll do the drum roll, yeah. I'll plug it in later on.
Thank you. I have Jessica Irizarry from the American Society of Interior Designers. She is the Senior Associate of Chapter Program Development. So maybe maybe when we use the word chapter, Andrew, we'll better understand what we're talking about. But Jessica, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Andrew, I'm hoping we can insert a standing ovation and applause with whistles.
Always. Absolutely. Don't worry. I'll plug it all in.
Yeah. For 55 episodes, can we not get some sound effects? Have we not earned that?
After we've got listeners, then we can have sound effects.
Stop it. How dare you? How dare you? Anyway, enough. Our next guest, no further delay. Michelle Runge, Director of Chapter Relations, Mid-Atlantic Region for America Inns of Court. Michelle, hello, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, more importantly, thank you to both of you ladies for inspiring this idea, for joining me and being a part of this submission to ASAE. I'm so excited about our session in August. We've already started talking about it and planning and doing some pre-work around it. It seemed only worthy of an association transformation podcast.
Before you start talking, plug it. What time is it on in Nashville? What time is it happening? So that people at the start and at the end of the podcast know when it's happening. Does anybody know? Jessica, Michelle?
I can tell you. Yeah.
Please.
So it's Tuesday, August 23rd at 9 a.m. local time, Nashville, till 10 a.m.
Wow, look at that.
Very
Somebody
exciting.
knows where we're going to be at that time, that day. Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be good.
And Jessica, didn't you help us get to this amazing title? What did we decide to title this session?
Well, now you're asking the hard questions. I think it's leveraging the untapped power of component relations. That's the title we landed on.
Yeah. Well, and Andrew, we chose that. To me, the word that sticks out most there is untapped. And I think, Jessica and Michelle and I all come from a place of love and great appreciation for components, but we don't know that the rest of the world feels that same way. And especially in member-driven organizations, in a world where everything didn't used to be webinars and virtual conferences, the component and chapter structure was the lifeblood of many organizations. And it's really important to us to elevate and appreciate and help component relations professionals learn from one another. That was really, correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, but that was the crux. That was our inspiration.
Absolutely. And honestly, the title of your podcast, Association Transformation, talk about truly transformative potential for all organizations within their business lines to really kind of tap into that business unit for moving their mission forward, for realizing their vision if done properly. And that's, I think,
there you go. Ding, ding, done properly. Ding, ding. Yeah. It is sad. Andrew, you and I work with international organizations.
Yep.
And it's sad how late in the conversation, or how after the fact, people give consideration to their chapters or their affiliates, or that localized opportunity to advance mission and deliver value. There's just I don't want to call it a disrespect, but a disconnect.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because you're right. I think you said before we started recording that this actually isn't a world that I'm familiar with in so much as you can imagine a UK context. That whole component piece is, I can't say it doesn't exist, but it certainly isn't as extensive as it is, in huge geographic regions like the US and Canada and Australia, South Africa. Our kind of components tend to be focused more around sort of subject matter rather than perhaps geographic location. But even then, they kind of bleed into other areas. And of course, the geographic proximity to everybody relative to where everyone else is in the UK, it's not really, it's an area of specialism that's arguably all but died out in the UK. So, it is interesting when you talk about, the power the untapped power and potential of components. I'm fascinated to understand what that means in reality. Michelle, what does that mean in reality? How do you understand it? How do you translate it?
Yeah, well, I think my context is a little different where I work. I think so often chapters are kind of seen not as an afterthought necessarily, but maybe more work for the national organization than they offer in member value, indirect member value. And so some associations might shy away from the chapter concept because they think, oh, it's just going to be more staff hours for us, and they're just going to be disconnected from us, and there's going to be this scope creep and mission creep, and we don't want to deal with that. But our association, we have staff we have 4 chapter relations directors at the moment. That's all that I do, is I travel and I talk to chapter leaders and I make sure that they have the resources they need to succeed. And it's amazing the value that they deliver to their local members and the outreach that they have into their community. So I think it can be a little difficult up front, but as far as untapped power goes, we collaborate with our chapters on a regular basis to develop educational programs to leverage the pull that they have in their communities to further our mission and vision as well. So personally, I've been in this position for about 3 years now, and it's been pretty incredible, even through COVID, to see what our chapters have accomplished.
It's so interesting you mentioned COVID, because I think this recent 24 months has been a time where organizations that were not just well-intentioned, but well-positioned with their chapters, COVID wasn't the setback that it may have been for a national organization that has to cancel one huge trade show that makes all their money. But those who didn't have a great alignment with their chapters, or weren't using their chapters as the delivery channel that they could be, seem to struggle more. And in person is in person, but your chapters have a connection. Your affiliates, your components have a more direct connection. And of course, it depends on how the membership flows. I mean, there's different business models here, and that has an impact on all this. But I mean, I grew up in an environment where you joined locally first, and it was it was a federation model, and so really the power lived with the local chapter, and they paid up the chain, and the national was the lobbying voice and the national government affairs agent, and brought people across geographies together. But it really was born from local and regional organizations.
But is this still like that?
Yes.
Is it?
I mean, the value propositions change and relate. Michelle, you're still in the mix. Yeah,
no, I think in practice, sometimes relationships break down and it doesn't work out.
Oh, Andrew knows all about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we do say leveraging the untapped power of component relations is our session title. And that sounds really positive. And it is, we have a lot of hope and a lot of, we think chapters are very promising, but that doesn't exclude the reality that sometimes it doesn't always work out. And so we're taking that into account. We're actually putting out a survey to component relations professionals and association executives to get their attitudes and their perceptions of how their components and their chapters are working in relation to their national organization, so that we can take that data, those data that are very contextualized, and trying to make this session as relevant as possible, to look at what are the challenges that people are dealing with right now. And how can we, from our experience as component relations professionals, take those challenges and kind of speak into them, knowing what we know through the survey, to develop some solutions for better component relations within an association.
That's right. And if you wouldn't mind my adding to that a little bit, but also just sharing a slightly a different perspective on chapters. Chapters is synonymous with community. Community means membership. So, I think that most of component relations practitioners and professionals, maybe their experience, pre-COVID was not getting enough support internally or externally or whatever those blocks were. With COVID and since COVID, I think that with the association, because Elisa, you said it really well, like a national organization will cancel a large meeting. Well, they're doing that, but then, they still have that grassroots network, their membership, the people who are feeling disconnected more and more in a situation or in an environment where, everyone really is siloed individually. And there's no place to gather. There's no way to really connect and try to talk to each other. What's really impactful about what happened there was associations started focusing, I think, a little bit more on those communities, and whether you call them chapters or sections or section councils like ASAE does, they don't have chapters, or however it's structured and where you are, Andrew, it's community, it's people, it's membership. So being able to highlight what those folks need and recognizing that associations have already a built-in business structure to help support all the things that they're doing, but they're not maximizing it for a lot of different reasons. And we can pontificate a little bit. We have some hypotheses, but generally it comes down to, I think, a lack of understanding and a lack of how. And so a lot of the times, the what gets in the way of the how, and we find ourselves blank.
So, I love to play devil's advocate.
Geez, ladies, I apologize in advance.
And I picked up on your I picked up on everything you're saying there, Jessica, but particularly you said, the components of the chapters are synonymous with community. So I have a client right now who shall remain nameless, although you know who you are if you're listening. I think they would argue that chapters are synonymous with conflict, not necessarily with community, because that is being fueled by the disconnect. Going back to the point you made there, Lisa, at the top of the pod, the disconnect between the center the national focus and funding and priorities and the regional or local. And that conflict has manifested itself in some significant problems for the organization, in so much as I have stepped in and had to mediate a conversation where these members were up in arms, arguing that they weren't getting what they needed because the center, as the national office, I quote them directly, they said, those people in the national office, they are not our professional peers. And I said, you're absolutely right. These guys are not your professional peers. They do not do what you do. All they can do is empathize. They cannot walk a mile in your shoes. So you're absolutely right. They're not your professional peers. And that seemed to placate the gentleman who made that point, until I pointed out that neither are the members, the national office's professional peers. And for me, yeah, I can see you laughing there, Jessica. You can imagine how that went down like a lead balloon. But the reality is, and for me, this is the root cause of the conflict. And when I rock up on the 23rd of August at 9 a.m. local time, I'm plugging that again, by the way. When I rock up, I'm going to be asking about this, because there is this disconnect. In my experience is fueled by the lack of understanding and appreciation as to what we as association executives are doing, and that the untapped power of the components, the chapters, the local level, is undermined by that particular issue, which is, yeah, we need to know what your needs are, dear member. Of course we do. But likewise, there's this issue where arguably sometimes association execs are seen as servile to the membership, rather than a distinctly different profession that exists to support the member's profession. Now, for me, that was a particularly extreme case, because that person was right up in my face, as it were, all on Zoom. But they were right up in my face. They were quite adamant about it. But it's an argument I've used a few times in the past, which is, we've got to have some give and take. We've got to understand what each is about. And for me, I don't see enough of that dialogue going on. So, I'm interested on what you think. Jess, you were laughing. You were raising your eyebrow. You were like, "Well, you said what? Oh my God, what did you do?" No wonder you don't work for associations anymore, Andrew. So, give me a take on that.
Sure. A couple of things. One is, show me a company where you're dealing with people and human beings and relationships where things aren't going to be a little, conflict, where you won't have conflict at any given point in time. And I think really when it comes from an executive perspective, they're trying to look at your return on investment. What's the bottom line? How's the impact? And it's very, very difficult when you talk about component relations, meaning, the actual entity itself, and component relations practitioners, those who are meant to perform the function and help both the organization and the members make those connections to maintain alignment. But, it's really, ROI is elusive when you talk about these relationships and the management of these relationships, because we really don't, most organizations anyway, I'm sure it exists in psychology, they don't have the ability to measure a relationship's impact on both output and outcome. And so they come up with, kind of this bird's nest of crazy material cemented into one thing, and not able to extract it from the main organization itself. And so we start to think about those things and those as heels, as cogs, as 100% overhead, not really worthy of our time and our investment. We start to place blame, all of those things. So, it's really kind of funny. Like, the other aspect of that is most associations, it doesn't matter what job you have. If you're a finance director, a CFO, CEO, COO, if you're the marketing communications person, if you're a membership person, you are in some way practicing the art and profession itself of component relations, because everything is connected. You really can't talk about the overall association structure without talking about your membership and the community that you're building. And, you know, as I said before, chapters is synonymous with community. So are sections. So it's just it's a structure upon which you place that community, which is why we use the term components. It's supposed to be all inclusive.
Right. I love that infrastructure of relationships. That's
well, I like it because it resonates. You know, if you think about, and I think more and more I'm seeing organizations start talking in systems thinking contexts, recognizing, as you say, the components of the system, and that we each rely on each other to actually make the whole system be successful. And I think the more we can start talking about, and you've that's really resonated with me now. And now this whole conversation is now making sense. Thanks, Jess.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Great.
Welcome to the
conversation. We accomplished what we came for. Interview over.
Job done.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
My work is done.
But I don't even think Andrew's fully appreciating all that the component relations environment can be, and even some of those pitfalls. I don't like to use the word conflict, but I mean, Michelle, you work in a world where your components are all driven by volunteers. There is not paid staff. There is not professional staff at the component level. So you are serving in an amazing capacity, not only as a bridge, as a support tool, as a facilitator, and as a delivery agent of your national value. That, I mean, I don't think Andrew has a full appreciation for how important, hard, and significant components really can be.
Well, thanks. Sorry, before you answer that, Michelle, thanks for making sure that everybody understands how bad I am at my job. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
We are bringing you into the component world because we're welcoming you into the component community.
I feel welcomed. Andrew doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, so somebody help him.
Stop it. When did you get so sensitive?
It's because it's late in the evening. I'm grouchy. That's why.
Okay, as long as that's out there. Back to Michelle.
Back to me. It's challenging when you do have volunteer leaders, because there's a whole spectrum of involvement, right? So you've got some leaders that are extremely invested. They want to see their chapter succeed. They really, they get a high from delivering this quality member experience. And then you have some where it's like, okay, well, I'm next in line. We work with lawyers and judges. They're super busy. They're working 60, 80-hour weeks. And then on top of this, they've got this volunteer role. And I think a lot of times people will disconnect because maybe the leadership succession plan isn't super great in their chapters. So they don't even really know what's expected of them. They don't know how to run a chapter. They don't know how to run a nonprofit, which is where we come in as chapter relations directors, because that is our wheelhouse. So sure, I can't support, I don't know how to advise a lawyer and what they do. I've never been to law school, but I can at least tell them how to implement a succession plan that can help, or create a handbook so that the next leaders coming in aren't just left with a blank slate. I can advise them in how to deliver engaging programs, even if they have to deliver them virtually during a pandemic, hypothetically speaking. So there's all sorts of ways that we can collaborate with our chapters and build that connection with the national organization. But something that I find really valuable is, when you make friends with one person, and then you make friends with another person, and then they both kind of come together and become friends with each other. And you're like, I helped make that happen. This is great. I love doing that for chapters too, because I think often chapters, especially if they're in the same metropolitan area, which a lot of our they often feel like they're in competition with one another. And what I really enjoy is being able to connect them with each other and see, actually, you can collaborate. You can put on really great educational programs. You can serve your community together. You can build off of one another, and your members get more out of that too.
I like what you said, Michelle. I think that that same process, that same education process that component relations professionals use to help teach and show and apply to volunteers running the business of their chapters of their component, that same practitioner, that component relations practitioner, has got to do the same internally too. They have to make sure that their executive leadership team and that their peers know that really what happens at that headquarters level when you have components has a cascading impact on all of the rest of those components in that community that they're relying on for dues dollars, sponsorship dollars, or whatever it is to make that impact. Maybe your bottom line isn't financially based. Maybe it's you're more of a charitable organization, but that still applies because it's hard for us sometimes to remember that our volunteers are just that. They're volunteers. They're not paid for this. And Michelle, I'm pretty sure you work 60, 80 hours a week sometimes too, maybe sometimes even more. So it's really important for us to be a little bit immersive in the profession that we're supporting as component relations professionals, but it's also really important for us to be able to make that verbal translation that happens so we can align, what it is for running this chapter, what it is for, fulfilling these succession seats here and this governance requirement. It's to relate it to their profession, to something in their profession, so that they have that aha moment, so that they can make those connections, and then doing the same thing to our internal constituency. So I think it's really interesting that component relations practitioners are in a really kind of amazing spot. Mm-hmm. They're in an amazing spot because they are the conduit for understanding, for education, for performance, for their society, for reaching that mission, for seeing that vision, and for implementing it on the grassroots level too. So it's kind of great what we do. And it's really hard what we do. And it's really important what we do.
Amen.
Well, there you go. So you have set us up well for Tuesday, the 23rd of August at 9:00 local time in Nashville. When I rock up, what am I gonna? I mean, we've had a brief introduction today to the session. Just give me a flavor of what I'm going to expect, because what have we got? An hour together in Nashville? Is it an hour and a bit?
It'll be an hour learning lab. With the panel you see here today, Jessica, myself, and Michelle. We will be coming to the table with the results of our survey, which has yet to launch. So this data will be so fresh. You won't have seen it anywhere else. We will save it just for that session and bring it to you in August. And we want to have a conversation with the audience. We want to share and hear from and swap ideas and best practices and commiserate, but more importantly, learn and advance the component relations profession together and learn how to get what we need from our senior staff, from our national organizations to invest in component relations appropriately, and how we can, really raise the water for all boats. I mean, that's what we're talking about. That's the magic of this position, is that we can have an impact on both sides of the scale. And I know the three of us are excited to have you here. And Andrew and I are so thankful to Michelle and Jessica for joining us today. Episode 55, one for the record books. So thank you, ladies, for joining us. Hopefully the first of many chapter component affiliate conversations that we want to have here at Association Transformation. And for those of you that are involved in components, feel free to reach out. You can join us for a conversation. You can suggest a component relations topic. Email us hello@yourconsort.com, or you find us wherever you get your podcasts. We invite you to make Association Transformation one of your favorites and download us whenever possible. Until next time, we say, put your members and your mission first.